Hello, everyone. The millions of people that watch this live stream. Yeah, I got jokes. Oh, there's a bunny rabbit outside. The neighbor's yard is amazing. They got garden. They've got, I see bunny rabbit. I see birds. I see a squirrel on the fence. They've got just amazing flowers. Just makes me look bad because my backyard also has animals, amazing plants, lots of flowers of the Canadian thistle variety. But anyway, I purchased this land back, so I'm turning it back to nature. uh, Anywho, today, Tuesday, we are talking about Indigenous Allyship, Indigenous Relations, Indigenous EDI. Please ask your questions in the comments. My name is Ian Hopfe. I'm an Indigenous HR consultant here in Edmonton, Alberta. So ask your questions in the comments so I have something to talk about. If you are looking for a more private conversation with me and you want to book a meeting, use this QR code right here. If you're on YouTube, I think it should have popped up in the chat, the live stream chat. So you should be able to see that. But you should be able to pick the type of meeting you want to do with me if you're looking for something a little more private. Oh, Kitty, move, Kitty, go. Chan the cat, as always, trying to get in on the show. She's the only one who jumps up on my desk. Yes, we have 3 cats. Okay, we got 3 cats. She's the only one who jumps up on my table. And if I don't give her the lovin', she goes over and sits in front of the window and watches the neighbors as they garden. So always fun something to look at. But if you want to book a meeting with me, right, I'm an independent HR consultant, so great for small businesses, especially for businesses that are less than 99 employees and you don't have a full-time HR person working with you, or you're currently working with some other HR consulting firm or consultant, right? If you're not working with them, then go ahead. Let's make a meeting. Let's talk. Let's chat. Today's chat, of course, is Indigenous Relations, because I'm Indigenous. I'm half Indigenous. Obviously, from looking at my name, I kind of got a German last name. My father was not Indigenous. So, but in my culture, we follow the mother's family line. So I identify as an Indigenous. Oh boy, music. Oh, let's get some music going. I don't know. Yesterday we did chill. Classical, no, somatic, world music. Well, I don't know if that's exactly appropriate. It might be more indigenous in nature. Oh my. Let's just do some ambient music. See how loud it is. I guess that's okay. Can you hear that? Very quiet. I got it on pretty low there, so just so that during the quiet period you guys can listen to music instead of listening to nothing. But I'm going to check online to see if, yes, my live stream is showing on LinkedIn. It is working there. And let's see, my live stream on YouTube. Yes, it appears to be working. And it's muted. Yes. Okay. So I know it's working. I know everything's working. I'm still new at this, so I'm still checking and just nervous. Yesterday, if you watched yesterday's live stream, I coughed. And when I cough, I turn off my microphone. I mute the microphone right from the button in front of the microphone right in front of me. And I forgot to turn it back on after the cough. Oh my, so humiliating. That is just so humiliating. So I don't know. I might leave it on. You'll get to hear me cough more often. Let's see. What do we want to talk about? I got open up my eBook, which I call Top Indigenous Relations Tips. Last week with my book, we talked about the land acknowledgements, or the easy implementation things. So that was starting to do a land acknowledgement. And I say, in your organization, if you have 3 or more people in a meeting, go ahead, do a quick land acknowledgement. Just ask different people to do it and assign that before the next meeting. Wendy, you're doing land acknowledgement next. And she takes 5 minutes and learns a little bit about the local Indigenous people, and she can share that during her land acknowledgement. Put a land acknowledgement on all email signatures. Right, again, the email signature is a personal version of the land acknowledgement, so it's where you live specifically. So we have a lot of remote work, hybrid work, whatever. We do this more personal because I acknowledge the people in the place where I am right now. You can put the general land acknowledgement on all your websites and major advertising. This would be, it's a little more general. It doesn't necessarily speak about individual nations or regions. It's just more of it's really more general. Watch the live stream from last week and I go into more detail. So I used the program to mute myself, not the button on my microphone. So I'll make sure my chat's on just in case someone tries to chat. How dare they try to chat? So, and we also talked about, after land acknowledgements, committing to having 5% Indigenous employees within your organization. That's the population of Canada. 5% are Indigenous, so you kind of make this commitment to get 5% across your whole organization. If you have a location, sub-office, or whatever you want to call it, in an Indigenous community where there's more Indigenous people, then you want to say, oh, there's 25% Indigenous people in this particular community. Let's try to make sure we got 25% Indigenous staff in that location. That doesn't have to be the whole organization. So I would do that as a tiebreaker. If you have 2 identical employees, the tiebreaker is you take the Indigenous person over the non-Indigenous person. But if you want to increase how many Indigenous people are applying for your jobs, then you advertise that job where Indigenous people are. The local friendship centers, the different Indigenous agencies, heck, even other Indigenous businesses. You might want to partner with them. And I talked about booking the KAIROS Blanket Exercise, and this is a great starting point to start you and your organization and your employees on the journey of reconciliation. The KAIROS Blanket Exercise is a participatory history lesson of the last about 500 years, and it is very powerful, and it hits all the major events that have happened, from colonization, and it gives everybody this general knowledge in your organization, and it's a great starting place to start that reconciliation or allyship journey. Okay, so what we can do is move on to some intermediate implementation type stuff. Now this isn't a definitive list. There is a lot of other things you can do. With the first one, it leads right into this. Connect with local Indigenous organizations or the nearest First Nation. You can just connect with them directly and ask how you can help them. Ask them how to improve your working relationship with them. And there's too often we find ourselves in a situation where we think we know. It's called a white savior situation. I know what these people need, so this is what I'm going to give them. Honest to God truth, you have no idea what any other group of people needs until you speak to them and ask them, and they are going to be extremely grateful, and you are going to have a great start to building some great relationships that could really boost your organization, whether it's just reputation or business. That's the whole idea. You want to be able to improve your business. So this is a good starting point. Ask them how you can help. Maybe meet with them regularly or communicate with them regularly. There's a lot of give and take opportunities, and I think you build that trust first by giving. And I don't mean just massive amounts of money or anything like that. There's all kinds of ways you can give. Donations, discounts, partnerships, sponsorships, Indigenous worker programs, project support, or general allyship support, right? There's get creative. Listen to them, take that feedback and get creative on what you can help them with, because eventually they're going to come back and help you somehow by saying something like, oh, please work with this company because they're good people, right? And if you want to get into that market, then you've got to start by giving, and the expectation is getting nothing back, right? Don't expect anything, at least anything soon, because you got to build that trust, that relationship. Indigenous people, Indigenous organizations, First Nations, they are inherently untrusting of colonial governments, white-owned organizations, any organizations that's owned by anyone that's not Indigenous, right? And you've got to deal with that. You just got to accept that. So, so you want to build this relationship so that anytime you have another question or want to do anything, you want to have that person, that connection you've made, as your primary contact. That's the first person you're going to contact. Hey, so-and-so, we're thinking of doing this. What do you think? And they can come back, that's great, or let's change it. You forgot protocol, whatever. because protocol is going to be different with each First Nation and each group of Indigenous people. Some may be open, some may be a little more strict, right? You got to remember, every First Nations, every group of Indigenous people are different. They are different people, different languages, different dialects, possibly the same language, but they're different. They all have different cultures and what they think is proper etiquette when it comes to connecting with an elder or something like that, right? They're all different. So you need to take that time and learn that through this connection you've created, right? Be earnest and ask those questions. How would we connect with the wider nation, with the wider group of people? And that comes to the next point, right? We're running through the intermediate implementation stuff. These are things, it takes a little more work. It's not just simply easy. It's not just doing a land acknowledgement or making a commitment to hire a certain percentage of Indigenous people, right? It's the stuff that really takes the work. So when you're making that first connection, you can say, hey, we've done these things to start our journey as an organization. What do we need to do next, right? You need to ask them, because there's no way I'm going to be able to give you advice for every nation out there. And I may even be wrong for my own nation, because I'm not on chief and council. I don't know the higher level stuff that our leaders have accepted or implement, right? So number two, so the first one is connect to local organizations and ask them what you can help with. Number two is connecting with a local elder or knowledge keeper. This allows you to have someone who's more of a cultural advisor, ceremonial person. They're going to help you with gifting protocols, right? They're gonna help you through this journey a little bit more. This is like calling in the specialist, right? And some of these elders, they may want to work with outside organizations, or they might not want to. But that first connection you make, they're going to help you through this, right? If you're like, I want a weekly ceremony at the office, a blessing, whatever, or at lunchtimes, we want an elder to come in and teach us traditional teachings or whatever, right? Maybe once a week or something, right? This is the sort of stuff that you're bringing in, that specialist, that expert in these sorts of things. And just remember, all elders are different. They have a skill, some sort of traditional skill, and that's what they do. Like I think of my mother, I would consider her an elder for beading and moccasin making, and in some of the language skills, right? My aunt, her older sister, I would consider an elder for the language and for teepee making. And if I needed a medicine person, I have no idea in my community, in my culture, who I would communicate with, because these sorts of things, these sorts of elders have gone underground, stayed underground. This is protocol. This is what we call the protocol. You've got to make an offering and say, hey, I need the knowledge. First, I need to know who does it, so I'm making an offering. And then once I find out, then I got to offer them the protocol also. Each nation's going to have their own way of doing protocol. It might be simple, it might be harder. So you've got to learn this before you start approaching elders. And having that contact, that initial contact that teaches you, is vital. And you're just kind of connecting with this elder at this point. But part 2 of this is you're inviting this elder to do something, give a prayer or a smudge, if that's the type of elder they are, right? Whatever you're inviting them to do. And it's a great situation to do it at a larger all-staff meeting or a shareholder meeting or something like that, because these are important meetings for your organization. So honor the local First Nations by saying, look, these are our leaders, so we invite you to come do something for our leaders. So that's nice. Now, anytime you bring an elder in for any reason, you're paying them. Absolutely. This isn't something free they do. An elder does stuff so they can make a few bucks. That's the honest truth, right? So, I mean, anyone that thinks that you can just call in an elder to come do a prayer for free is delusional. You've got to do something. The most important thing is you can pay them. And that initial contact is going to give you local advice on what you should be paying that elder. Could be $50, could be $500, right? The nation, the situation, the time commitment. Remember, most elders are older people, so getting them to leave their home, come to a meeting, right? That's a big deal. That's a lot of work for them. So pay them, preferably feed them, and definitely follow the protocol of the local nation to get them out and to honor them for doing what they've done for you. And just paying them is not the honor, right? You've got to acknowledge them. So once you've built this relationship, you can bring the elder to do things, whether it's doing prayers or smudges, or maybe they're just doing a lunch and learn and they're teaching Indigenous culture in some way, shape, or form. Maybe they're teaching language to your employees, so your employees aren't learning just the dirty words, as we always learn. And people are always so happy to teach them dirty words when you first start learning an Indigenous language. It's because we're funny people. So certainly, if you're doing a project, say you've redecorated a boardroom, or you've built a new building, a new office, a new shop, or whatever, you can bring in an elder to help christen the office, give it a prayer, smudge it when it's open, whatever, turn it into a local cultural event. And you can even name the boardroom after the elder, or after the local nation, or something like that. Get creative. This is pretty simple stuff. And even though it's intermediate, but the intermediate part is because you've had to have built that relationship, that connection and the relationship before you start doing some of these things. And so when you're naming something, that's like a naming ceremony, and naming the building, the room, the large piece of equipment, any events you got going on, big staff meeting or something like that, bring in the elder. This is extra content for your event. But imagine if the local elder is smudging your new piece of heavy equipment and they give it an Indigenous name. I mean, that is cool. Now you got this piece of equipment. It's not just equipment number 0024, right? It is now 0024 the Nighthawk or whatever the Indigenous name might be. It might be in the local Indigenous language, right? But that would be cooler. Now that your piece of equipment is going onto job sites in the area, on the land, and just having a cool name like that, it's kind of an honor to the people. Oh, got an itchy eye. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh, sorry. Sorry, sometimes you just gotta scratch your eyeball. Oh, okay. And then you gotta cough. Oh, getting over the cold, or maybe this is the cold. I don't know. I felt like all last week I had a bit of a cold. My wife is way worse. So where are we at? Lost my place. So, number one, build that relationship. Connect with a local Indigenous organization or nation, right? Connect with a local elder. You may even invite them to be on your local advisory board for the office, for the community. Invite the elder to come do a prayer or smudge the new building or piece of equipment, or do something that they're skilled in, like the beating at lunchtime, or maybe someone who comes in and teaches the local Indigenous language or dialect for an hour at each lunchtime, and your staff can go learn, right? This might be great. Connect, get to know the elder, invite them to advisory committee type stuff, and do the prayer and opening the blessing for new offices or buildings or heavy equipment. And the last one, your intermediate implementation. Research and implement the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada's 94 calls to action. Only some of the calls to action will directly concern your organization, and you're going to want to just take a quick read through them. In most cases, if you're just a business, like most businesses, you're probably just concerned with the call to action number 92, and that's reconciliation in business. And you've already started to take that step forward at this point, especially if you've already done a KAIROS Blanket Exercise. That's the education part of number 92. So you're already taking this journey, and you want to get to know that number 92. Now, if you're in a specific industry, education, government stuff, or healthcare, there is more for you. There's certain areas where Indigenous people have been mistreated in the past. So if you think your business is kind of in one of those areas, go ahead and search for the call to action that may concern your organization. Some of it may be just doubled up, right? It's like you must educate your people on certain topics. Well, you've covered that already, especially if it's the KAIROS Blanket Exercise or something like that, right? Or you're starting to cover that. So those 94 calls to action are a really great starting point. It sounds like a lot, but it's really not a lot. There's only going to be one or a couple that directly concern you. as a business, as an organization. And because you want your organization to be seen as an ally to Indigenous people, I mean, this is Canada. Every piece of land is either covered by a treaty or it's considered unceded by the local First Nations. So it was land that wasn't given up. And treaties are important to Canada because that's how no, that's not what I wanted. Huh. My scene has disappeared. How do I work this? What is going on? Oh my god. Sometimes this program... What is this plus button? Screen share. Okay. Let's see if this works. Oh yes, I want to share a window, but I've got to... There's a chart I want to show. Oh, this is not... So I don't know how to unshare when I'm already sharing. Stop share screening. And I can't think because I have to go to the washroom. Oh my god, it's so humiliating. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna say I'm gonna be right back, and I will be right back. I got you. I'm back. I'm back. Thank you for waiting. Sorry about that. I was going to show you an image. Let me bring up the image first, and then I will share my screen. Why is that creepy ambient music getting louder? Anyway, whatever. As long as it's not too loud. Oh, doo-doo-doo-doo. Doo-doo-doo-doo. Oh my god, why can't I find this? Is it a website pic? No, it's not a pic. Oh my god, if we had more stuff to talk about, this wouldn't feel so painful. What I don't get is how I can lose something that's obviously for a certain thing, and then it's just not saved where it's supposed to be saved. So typical of me. Here we go. Here we go. Got it. I got it. I got it in Canva. I built it in Canva, so I'm just downloading it again so that I can open it up as a shared window, because I have no idea where it's located on my computer right now, which is insane. So I'm gonna squish down my screen a little bit. Pause to cough. Then I'm going to do the share screen thing again. Share window. Let's see if this works the way I want it to work. It has not worked. Oh, all right. I can move it around. Excellent. So we were talking about traditional territories, the treaties. This is what Canada looks like, politically speaking. We have the land, right? We have the land here. And then the treaties is what makes the land available to be shared with the colonial governments. And then we have our governments, which are equal Indigenous governments, each one of them. Each individual nation is equal to the colonial government as a whole. The colonial government has chosen to create 3 levels: the federal, the provincial, and the municipal governments. And they've chosen to split up their governance that way. But that all 3 levels are part of the equal government of the Indigenous nations. And this is what Canada is. This is what Canada, legally, politically speaking, this is how it is framed. Canada itself is not a thing, not a political body. Canada is an amalgamation of the colonial governments and the Indigenous governments, because we're sharing the land, and the treaties is what makes this happen. So it's hard to think about this, right? Because the federal government has obligations to Indigenous people based on the treaties. The colonial governments has tried to shape it like the federal government covers everything. Like the Indigenous governments are part of the federal government when they're not. They're completely different governments. The colonial government has obligations to support the Indigenous governments in return of being able to share the land. That's it. That's the way it's supposed to work. But of course, the federal government has not been fair and has done all kinds of things wrong, and basically treated Indigenous people like we are a department within the federal government. We aren't a department. It's almost like they're treating us like we're employees of the federal government, and we're not, right? The department in charge of Indigenous Relations, their sole purpose should be continual treaty interpretation and relations with Indigenous governments, right? Because the two are separate, but we work together, we share the land, right? And it's kind of this lost thing. And we have archaic documents like the Indian Act, which should be just straight up abolished at this point, that don't reflect this legal reality of what Canada is. So I made this for a workshop I do. It's kind of the final screen to teach. This is what the true Canada is. It is not the federal government and then Indigenous governments. It is equal Indigenous governments and federal, provincial, municipal governments, right? The colonial governments have chosen to have 3 levels. Indigenous nations haven't really. There is some support for larger organizations like AFN, and where the chiefs all meet together and things, and that. Is that working? I don't know. They're supposed to be just an advocacy group. Because the truth is, each nation is its own government and should have its own access to the relationship building with the federal, provincial, and municipal colonial governments. So this is something to think about, and it kind of throws you on your head because you're trying to understand how it works. And because we're Canada, and we're all Canadians, we're administered by different governments. And these different governments have responsibilities to the peoples and the lands. And no single government should be above and beyond each other. Equality, treaties. This is why you hear people say we're all treaty people. I've heard white people argue that they're not treaty people. No, you are, because the treaties create the conditions for this dual government process. Actually, it's more dual government. It's a multi-government situation. It's the colonial government and its levels, and every different Indigenous government. And there's lots of them. 480 or something like that. I can't remember the exact number, but there is a lot of different governments that need to be included in this equality of Canada, and that's not being done. So it's really interesting, and it really makes you just have to kind of, Canada's not what I think it is. Now, if you think about Indigenous people in the United States, after the United States had its War of Independence and broke away from the British, one of the factors in there was that King George III said that colonial governments could not expand into the rest of North America unless they get into a treaty building process with the First Nations. King George III said, this is Indian territory, you can't go there. Now in the United States, they didn't like that. So as part of one of the reasons why they broke away from the British was that now they could start expanding west. And they started their Indian Wars, and essentially First Nations in the United States, Indigenous people in the United States, are a conquered people. This is different from what has happened in Canada. In Canada, the treaty-making process continued. There was already treaties in Eastern Canada, and they continued to make these treaties moving westward. And of course, there was still some places that weren't covered by a treaty and were unceded, so there's no treaty framework for them yet. So the land was unjustly claimed to be part of Canada, when in reality, anything that's unceded should not be part of Canada, because we have this diagram that says Canada is the makeup of Indigenous governments and the colonial government, based all on the treaties. So if there is no treaties covering a certain territory legally, that territory is not part of Canada. Think about it. No lawyer or court in the world is going to want to agree with me or make that the fight they want to die on, the hill they want to die on. But that is the truth. If there's any territory within the current boundaries of Canada that is not covered by a treaty, it is unceded, and thereby not, has never was, and will never will be, unless there's a treaty, been a part of Canada. So we look at most of BC, large territories of the Northwest Territories. You know, there's there is a lot of territory in Canada that is not covered by a treaty. Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing for now. Get me back to big screen. And we can look at, like in Alberta, last time I did show the treaty map. And I don't like that. I want it to be bigger. So I'll take and shrink that down a little bit. Try to get more of it on the screen. Right, so we look at Alberta. That's why it says we are all treaty people. This is a territorial agreement, right? It's not it's a nation-to-nation territorial agreement. So we look at Alberta. Alberta is 100% covered by one of, what's that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different treaties. So all the land, 100% of the land in Alberta is covered by a treaty. So hereby, legally, all of Alberta is part of Canada. Let's see. I'll just leave that up. That's the, I always like to make sure I give credit. The Alberta Teachers Association map. This is an amazing map. I think they created this as a teaching tool. And it's amazing. It covers everything. It's got the treaties, it's got the Métis settlements, it got the Métis Nation of Alberta, regional zones, and it even tells you the language grouping, the Cree, the Dene Saltee, the Stoney Nakoda Sioux, and the Blackfoot. They're all different languages, right? They're all different languages. And of course, my language, Sakau Cree, is here in around Big Stone Cree Nation. That's my nation, but it's spoken in this area. It is a variant of Cree. It is a cross between Plains Cree, which is down here in central Alberta, and Woodland Cree, which is more over here in northwestern Alberta. So it's kind of a cross between those two languages. But can we look at let's see if there's a treaty map of BC. Let's have a look. I'm just downloading a map that shows all of Canada, actually. Not sure how accurate this map is, but let's have a look. I'm going to turn this one off. Stop sharing this window. Make sure you see me good. And I gotta open up the new map. Which didn't work. I think I got it. open it up now. Share screen. Share window. Share this window. Of course, this is wrong. So these are the numbered treaties. Now, there is some older treaties in Eastern Canada that aren't numbered. They're named treaties, but these are the numbered treaties in Canada. So you can see, except for Treaty 8, which is my treaty, except for Treaty 8, this map is not showing any numbered treaties in British Columbia. So legally, any of the territory you see that isn't covered by a treaty isn't part of Canada. That landmass legally still just belongs to the local Indigenous nations. Legally. This is sorry, excuse me. But you can see, of course, the government's going to argue this up, up one side, down the other, because they're trying to claim this territory. But legally, because Canada was created by treaties, any place that is not covered by a treaty or claimed by another country, right, is legally not part of Canada. Think about that. Modern treaty says Nunavut, right? Most of half the Northwest Territory is Big Baffin Island. This is a new province, but it is actually an extension of the treaty. It is a modern day treaty. The modern treaty area has just been absorbed into the Canadian politic and become a new territory that is governed strictly by the Indigenous people that live there. So it was kind of amalgamation of the two systems. But it was born out of treaty negotiations, but became a territory recognized within Canada, like a province, like the Northwest Territories, like the Yukon Territory. So that's more of a modern day thing, and that's a different situation. That's a different reality, right, than what we saw in the past. So I'll stop sharing this. Stop sharing window. But it's a strange way to think about it. We learned growing up, this is Canada, but social studies book I remember was 2-page. There was Indigenous people before the Europeans came. That was basically it. And it showed some Indigenous people, maybe a teepee, and some people doing traditional work, right, tanning hides or whatever, right, and it was all illustrated, and that was it. The next page was, basically Europeans arrived, right? That was history. And the colonial governments basically state that Canada was formed because of these certain colonial declarations by the kings and queens of Europe and all this stuff, right? But the only thing that is really true is the treaty negotiations, and even those weren't handled properly by the colonial government side of things. They didn't honor what those treaties meant. 12:31. Let's see, we've been on air for about an hour. I do want to talk a little bit about what it means to be an ally. And you want to bring this into your company, your business, on traditional territory. Basically, everywhere in Canada is traditional territory, right? Not just out of the city, out on the land, right? It's all traditional territory. So trying to be that proper ally is important in Canada, especially for the unceded territories. If you operate in an unceded territory, you have to be extra careful, extra polite, extra nice to these nations that have not been recognized by treaty. Like I said, technically they own the land, and it's not part of Canada. Anything that's unceded, it would be good to remember that. There is a colonial government laying claim to it, but legally it doesn't belong to them. So I've put together 5 things to indicate what it means to be an ally to Indigenous people. These 5 things have been adapted from other places, and I give credit to them, especially Guide to Allyship.com. It's a good place to start. It's primarily a guide to allyship for people of color, Black people, African Americans type things, but it's the same situation. It's the same sort of stuff. It's that same acknowledgement of your overt or covert racism, right? This is, to be an ally is to be humbled, to realize the system and the environments that you grew up in were designed to put other races down. And we also see that with the LGBTQ community. The same thing. They're being put down, being suppressed, being treated like less than people, right? And so these are the 5 that come up. A lot of them are pretty similar to Guide to Allyship.com, but there are also other sections that I've taken from different places, other Indigenous allyship places. So I just kind of curated it, put it together. So I don't think I've come up with these myself. I've done the research and found the information, and it's been a few years since I put this together, so there may be additional research you could do to improve on these. So number 1, take on the struggles as your own, but do not label yourself as an ally. Continue learning, ask the experts for how you can help, and be active. So that relates to the intermediate one, where you're connecting with a local organization, an Indigenous organization, and you're asking them, how can I help? At this point, you're not an ally. You're still doing your learning journey. You don't know, heads from tails at this point. So calling yourself an ally is an insult. And in my particular Indigenous culture, someone is not an elder until another elder or other people have labeled them an elder. So I don't walk around saying I'm an elder because of my teachings with the KAIROS Blanket Exercise. I don't even call myself a knowledge keeper. It's kind of like knowledge keeper is like a baby elder type thing, like an elder in training. I don't even call myself that, because nobody from my community has said, Ian, you are like this. we acknowledge you to be this. So in my culture, if you start calling yourself an ally, it's like someone calling themselves an elder when they haven't been recognized. Eldership isn't age. You don't turn 65 and suddenly you're an elder. You have to be good in something that the community values culturally. And you are teaching, and you are actively teaching other people that aspect, that skill, that knowledge. You're actively teaching. So don't ever label yourself an ally until someone labels you an ally. So that's number one. Take on the struggle as your own, but don't label yourself as an ally. Number two, stand up for what's right, even when you feel scared. Be the first to speak up against belligerent individuals or large oppressive power struggles. Stand up for what's right. And it's hard for us to stand up for something that's right. It's scary. It's scary, especially when mainstream is going against it. Especially in this case, when there's so many racists who say they're not racist, fighting against Indigenous people. This is it's scary. I think right now in the news we hear about Greta Thunberg taking her voyages to try to bring supplies to Gaza, to the Palestinians. And do you think this is easy for her? Right? She is doing something extremely dangerous. She is proving that she is an ally. She is proving that she might be one of the bravest people on the planet, because she's defying an extremely well-armed and well-protected government. That's scary. And I think she has really stood up, even though she's probably so scared. Can you imagine her parents, her family, her friends, how worried they are for her? Right? She's taking that step. She's trying to protect the Palestinian people and support them in any way. Give them a voice. It's scary. So number three, transfer the benefits of your power and privilege to those who lack it by introducing them into or recommending them to your networks as the experts. So again, we think about Greta. She is a white woman. She is using her power and privilege as a white woman to give it to people that need it. These Palestinians, these Middle Eastern brown people. She is doing everything to give her white privilege and her millions of followers, trying to give them a voice. Right? And at the same time, she picks up the local experts and says, this is an expert. We're supporting them, right? And that's when you use your power and privilege. Now, a lot of white people, they don't seem to understand how much power and privilege they have, because within every culture, within every group of people, there's people that have more privilege and less privilege within that group. Well, the colonial governments are designed to oppress non-white people. They're just designed that way. And this is because historically there was more racist people. So these laws and governments and rules are designed to just inherently support white people. In particular, white men. If you're a white woman, you still have less power, but you do have the ability to call on other white privilege. What's the term called? White women's tears. As soon as a white woman is crying, every white man in the area comes to the rescue, right? So there is a certain amount of privilege and power in being a white person. And I see that privilege in myself because I have a German sounding last name. Sometimes I get my foot in the door before the organization realizes that I'm Indigenous. I've historically, when I'm job hunting, I'll get interviews because I have a great resume and a great cover letter. So I'll get that interview. But then as soon as they notice I'm Indigenous, I don't get the call back. I certainly don't get the job. Sometimes I don't even get past the first interview. And that's my half white privilege. It gets my foot in the door. And then as soon as they see my face, they slam the foot and they break my foot on my way out. So that privilege, I understand that power and privilege being half white and half Indigenous. Having that white sounding last name, that German sounding last name, it's afforded me a bit of privilege. And it's personally the journey of understanding who I am, my place in the world. It's been a struggle, right? But that's a different topic. But it's hard. It's hard for white people to say, here's an Indigenous person. They are an expert on this. It is now their turn to speak about this topic that they're an expert on. So it doesn't necessarily have to be because I'm Indigenous, I'm an expert on Indigenous culture, right? Because I'm an HR consultant. Here's Ian Hopfe. He's a member of the Big Stone Cree Nation from Northern Alberta, and he is an HR consultant. He is an expert in HR. It's his turn to talk. Please listen to him. We give him full authority to address this group, right? That's the number 3. Transfer the benefits of your power and privilege to those who lack it. And that can be hard. And it's just part of this. If you want to be an ally, you've got to do certain things. So number 4, let's review them real quick. Number 1 was take on the struggle as your own, but don't label yourself as an ally. Number 2, stand up for what's right, even when you feel scared. Number 3, transfer the benefits of your power and privilege to those who lack it. Number 4, here's number 4. Engage in self-reflection of what you have and your experience versus what others don't have or their reality. All right. Engage in self-reflection of what you have and experience versus what others don't have or their reality. I am very, very grateful. My wife, who is not Indigenous, she's very supportive, and she's had to go on this journey of being an ally and understanding me and my culture. And we've been together now about 17 years, married for 15. And she's had to go on this journey with me. And I'm so grateful. But we took a trip to Northwest Territories a few years back. This is way pre-COVID. It might be 10 years ago now. This was pre-COVID, way pre-COVID. And we drove to Northwest Territories. Part of this trip was stopping at my sister's place in my hometown for her wedding to her new partner. And we stayed overnight there for the wedding and stuff. And then we traveled north. And an aunt of mine, when she was younger, she met a man from up north. And they shacked up and moved to his reserve, his nation. And so we continued driving, and we were able to stop and visit. And Milan, hey, I see you. Milan, hey, great. Thanks for viewing. Thanks for doing your little, if you have a question, Milan, go ahead, ask it. And I can address it. We are talking about Indigenous relations today, so that's great. Sorry, I didn't see it right away. It's been a couple minutes since Milan posted in the comments. But, so we're going north. I spent some time living with my aunt. Me and my mom moved up north, and we stayed with her for a while, like, I don't know, almost a year, something like that. And it was less. I don't think I had winter up there, so summer I remember a lot of lawn mowing. But anyway, I lived up there on my uncle's reserve in their house next to the river. Oh, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. And she had the same house that she's had since I was a kid. So this house is at least 30 years old at this point when me and my wife travel up there. So I'm used to what the house was, and didn't faze me or didn't shock me. But my wife, bless her soul, for her journey to be an ally for me, it shocked her. And she was like, oh, they don't have very much and their house is falling apart. And, she got a shock. She got a real shock about this culture, the realities of being Indigenous in the North. And my wife went into this whole culture shock situation. And to me, I was like, really? I thought she was keeping up the house really well, and it was in really good shape as far as I was concerned, right? But that's because I have a different level of cultural reality. I don't know I grew up in this culture. I understand that there are bad homes on reserve, and you don't get a new house anytime soon, and cultural conditions, generational trauma, right? These things all factor into the current conditions. And it was interesting to see my wife engaging in this self-reflection So the number 4, engage in self-reflection of what you have and experience versus what others don't have or their reality. She went into this self-reflection situation, and as we continued north on our vacation, we spent a night at my aunt's place, and she got a bit of a culture shock and had to do this self-reflection. We talked about it a lot on our trip as we drove, and it's even someone who was working on their allyship still got a shock, still got that cultural shock, and had to relearn, reinvestigate themselves and their realities, right? So number 4, or sorry, we just did number 4. Number 5 of what it means to be an ally. Acknowledge that while you too feel pain and responsibility, the conversation is not about you. Give center stage and credit to the real experts and their story. So we do a lot of, we hear a story, and then we naturally say, oh yeah, that happened to me too, and then we tell our story. We've taken the conversation to ourselves. And being an ally means not taking that center stage, giving that. And it's really close and related to number 3, to transfer the benefits of your power and privilege. Because I think this is more of a personal one-on-one chat about it. Acknowledge that while you too feel pain and responsibility, the conversation is not about you. Give center stage and credit to the real experts and their story. So it's, I think about when me and my wife are facilitating the KAIROS Blanket Exercise. We got a room of 20 to 50 people all in a circle and doing the exercise. And at the end of that, we have a sharing circle. It's not a healing circle, it's a sharing circle. It's just, what did you learn? Do you have any thoughts about what the KAIROS Blanket Exercise was all about? What happened to you? Emotionally, mentally, whatever. And occasionally, there's always somebody with their covert racism, or they're just don't understand this is a time for Indigenous people. This isn't a time for your non-Indigenous story. Especially if it's a white non-Indigenous story. There's always somebody that says, oh, this is the same thing that happened to my white ancestors. And they're trying to relate to it. They're trying to make themselves part of the struggle, as opposed to giving way. If you're in a situation where you have this need, this urge to tell your non-Indigenous backstory, hold off. It's not your place at some events, an Indigenous related event. It's not your place. It's not your time to share your pain. It's not your time to share your personal responsibility to your own people, right? This is Indigenous people, and you're trying to support them. Keep on point. Keep the conversation. If you must say, oh, this is very similar that happened to my white ancestors, but let's hear more about you. how did your people deal with this, right? Ask those, move the conversation forward in the right direction, because an ally will always bring it back as quickly as possible to that Indigenous person that they're trying to support, or that Indigenous group they're trying to support. And these are the basic structures. If you talk to African Americans, Black people, any sort of immigrants, these are almost all the same things that they're using, that they need the white people around them to be an ally. And it's not about changing, and it's not about oppressing white people, because even if we try to change every law right now to oppress white people, there's just no way we can do it. It'll take another 500 years, and there's just no way it can get done here in Canada. There's too many laws that just naturally protect white people. You hear about people talking about protecting the middle class. Well, that's code for protecting white people, because New Canadians, Indigenous people, Black people, all other peoples of color, they're not considered middle class, because they don't have the resources, they don't have the political backing that a non-Indigenous or a white person has within this Canadian structure of governments, right? So it's so that's, I'm going to cut it off there, but that's the 5 steps to being an Indigenous ally. Take on the struggle yourself. Stand up for what's right, even if you're scared. Transfer the benefits of your power and privilege. Engage in self-reflection. And 5, acknowledge that while you too feel pain and responsibility, the conversation is not about you. So that's basics for being Indigenous ally. I'm just going to close that down. So I've gone over a lot of stuff. This topic sometimes makes me feel melancholy and sad. I'm talking about the plight of my people and the treatment of the colonial government and the colonial government's non-recognition of the treaties. A lot of non-white people would think treaties are a thing of the past. And we know right now, we've already spoken about it, that it's not. Treaties are active, living documents right now. They're the basis of this country. And you have to remember that. You have to acknowledge that. Indigenous people in Canada are not a conquered people like the United States. There was treaties that allowed the sharing of the land. Sharing, not giving up. This is all, it's all unceded. But if it's not covered by a treaty, then they refer to it as unceded. And thereby technically not a part of Canada without any sort of treaty, whether it's the name treaties or the numbered treaties. So 1:02 my time. We've done an hour and a half. I got no questions. No new questions coming in. I'll do a quick look to see if maybe I'm missing a question somewhere. Nope, we're all good. We're all good. So I'm gonna let you go. I can go find some lunch. Get your questions ready for next week, or comment once this live has posted. Go ahead and make a comment. I'll try to review, see if we can cover any of your questions or comments on this. So, all right, I'm gonna go. Milan, if you're still watching, thank you for your comment. Hey, go ahead, comment more, and we'll talk more tomorrow or next week. Speaking about the week, I always forget what my schedule is. The schedule for live events. So Mondays is HR Madness. We did that yesterday. Tuesday is Indigenous Allyship. So we're going to cover any topics on Indigenous issues, whatever. Wednesday, tomorrow, is Gigs and Hustles. So we're going to talk about all that good stuff that we got to do. We may talk a lot about marketing, because as a small business owner, you're starting your new business. You're a marketer. I'm a marketer. I'm not an HR consultant. I'm a marketer. Anyway, Thursday, we're talking about Career Club. So we're talking resumes, cover letters, promotions, interviews, job search stuff, anything to do with advancing your career. We could talk about how to get a raise, whatever. And Friday is fun and games. We're talking anything, really. We can talk Dungeons and Dragons. We can talk Magic the Gathering. These are things I do. But we could talk movies. We can talk about board games. We can talk about video games. I don't care, as long as it's fun. We talk about books. I do like reading. I do enjoy reading. I usually read nonfiction. But I have read Isaac Asimov's Foundation series. So the new Foundation series on Apple, I love it. I don't care if it's not on par exactly with the books. I love it. It's a great show. But we'll talk about all that fun stuff. All right. I don't do lives on Saturday, Sunday. Everybody needs a day off. But I do try to post a little bit of video, especially on LinkedIn. But I am also posting the same videos on LinkedIn and YouTube now. So you should be able to get the same information no matter what platform you're on. And like I say, I stream with Restream.io, and I usually stream to LinkedIn and YouTube at the same time. I think because of the nature of my business, that's probably the two places I should spend all my time. Anyway, okay, thanks for watching, everybody.